Hi, I'm Assistant Professor Aditi Mathur, International Schools of Business Management, Suresh Kanviya University, Jaipur. And in today's video lecture, we'll be learning two very important laws, that is, law of return to scale and laws of returns. So let us just first understand that what do we mean by the law of returns to scale. Generally, many people get confused with both the concept. The law of returns are always often confused with the law of returns to scale. The law of return operates in short term. It explains the production behavior of the firms with one factor variable while other factor are kept constant. Whereas the law of return to scale operates in the long run. It explains the production behavior of the firm with all the variable factors. So the point to learn over here is that your law of return is related with your short run, where you have fixed and variable both factors. But whereas when we talk about your law of return to scale, it is related with your long run, where we have only variable factors, right? So now I do hope you have got a very thin line difference between what is law of returns and what is law of returns to scale. Now, let us just further understand. The law of returns to scale describes the relationship between the variable inputs and output. When all the inputs or the factor of productions are same in proportion, that means they all are variable. They can be increased or decreased. The law of returns to scale analyzes the effect of scale on the level of output. Here, we find out what proportion of output changes when there is a proportionate change in the quantities of all input. The answer to these questions help a firm to determine its scales or size in the long run. It has been observed that when there is a proportionate change in amount of input, the behavior of output varies. The output may increase by a great proportion, but in same proportion or by a smaller proportion to its input. The behavior of output with the increase in the scale of operation is termed as increasing return to scale, constant returns to scale, and diminishing returns to scale. These laws, we understand the relationship which exists between your inputs and output. And we try to know that if there is a change in proportionate of input, what are the results we can see in the output. And these changes are in three types. The first one is increasing returns. Then we have constant returns. And then the third one is your diminishing returns. Let us just understand all these returns to scale one by one. So let us just now learn what do we mean by increasing returns to scale. So as the term itself says, increasing returns, that means that if the output of the firm increases more than in proportion to equal to an percentage in increase in input, that is known as increasing returns to scale. Let's take an example. Let us just assume we have inputs and over here we have output. If we have the input of, let's say, 10 units, and we see that we are able to produce 1 unit of output. Now let us just assume that we have increased our input and we have increased in inputs, let's say 15 units, and the outputs have increased to, let us just say it to be 9, right? So we can see that the increase in output is more in comparison to increase in input. So we have actually increased 5 and we are getting the increase of 8, result, the increase of 8 in the outputs. So this is your increasing returns to scale. The increasing returns to scale says that your input will also increase, your output will also increase, but the proportion of increase of output will be more than the proportion of increase in your inputs. You can see the inputs are only 5 increase, but we have our more of outputs as the increased value. So this situation is known as increasing return to scale, when your outputs are increasing more in comparison to your inputs. They both are increasing, but the proportion of change or the proportion of increase in output doubled and the output increases more than the double, it is said to be an increasing return to scale. When there is an increase in the scale of production, it leads to the lower average cost per unit produced as the company or the firm enjoys economies of scale. So over here, we can say that if you are an increasing returns to scale, it is your economies of scale. Why? Because you are enjoying the lower average cost of per unit. And that's why you are in economies of scale. Let's see an example. We have 2 of capital and 2 of labor. We have 4 of capital and 4 of labor. These are the inputs which we have. And if we talk about the output, it is 200 and 500. The input is increasing by 100%. And on the other hand, the output is increased by 150%. This shows that the increase of returns to scale, as change in the output is more than the change in the input, right? So I do hope now you have understood what do we mean by our increasing returns to scale. Now let us just discuss few of the causes of increasing returns to scale. So one of the cause is your economies to scale. Certain inputs, particularly machinery, management, etc., are available in large and lump sum unit. Such inputs cannot be divided into small sizes to suit the small scale production. For example, there cannot be half a machine, half a computer, or half a manager. Some inputs have to be employed even if the scale of production is small. Therefore, a scale of production increases, these indivisible factors are utilized better and more efficiently. And this is how we accomplish our economies of scale, and which becomes one of the reasons for the increasing return to scale. The another one is greater specialization. As the scale of production increases, the efficiency of labor increases due to the division of labor and specialization of labor. Similarly, when the scale of production increases, it becomes possible to use specialized machineries and the services of specialized and experts management. And this is how we receive our increasing return to scale. Now, let us just understand that what do we mean by constant returns to scale. So when all the inputs are increased by the certain percentage and the outputs increases by the same percentage, the production factor is said to be in constant return to scale. Let's take an example. Let us assume that we have input of 10 and output is 100. If we increase it, we have 20 and the output has also increased. So if you see the proportionate increase, both of them are increasing to its double, the same proportion, right? And that is why we call it to be the constant return to scale. So what do we mean by the constant return to scale? When your proportionate increase in input is equal to proportionate increase in output. Such scale is known as your constant return to scale. If a firm doubles input, it gets double output. In case it triples, the output also triples. The constant scale of production has no effect on average cost per unit produced. But whereas we can see that in increasing return, the average cost per unit produced was low. But in the constant return, there is no effect on the average cost per unit. Let's take an example. We had 2 capital, 2 labor. It got increased to 4 capital and 4 labor. Similarly, for the output, we were having 200 rupees, which got increased, 200 units, which got increased to 400 when we increased our capital and labor. And this is how we see that the 100% increase is there in both the stage, that is input and output. And this is known as your constant returns to scale. Limits to the economies of scale and divisibility of inputs are the two causes of constant returns to scale. Increasing returns to scale cannot go on indefinitely. There is a limit to these economies of scale. When the economies of scale are exhausted and diseconomies are yet to start, there may be a brief phase of constant returns to scale. Divisibility of inputs. Constant returns to scale may occur in certain productive activities where the factor of productions are perfectly divisible. For example, we may double the output by setting up 2 plants which use the same quantities and the same type of workers, machineries, raw materials, and other inputs. So if you actually remember the graph which we have studied while we were discussing the different economies and diseconomies, so the graph was actually like this. Let me just draw it more clearly. This was our average cost. And we said it is economies, this is constant, and then diseconomies, right? So this was our economies, this was our constant, and this was diseconomies to scale. So when the diseconomies has to start and the economies has to, end, that small phase, a very small period, is where there is equal increase in the inputs and output, and that is your constant returns to scale. And this may be because of the limited economies of scale and the divisibility of inputs. The inputs can be divided very easily if you have the same inputs to be used in these different plants. The example which I have taken in this explanation. Now, let us just all understand what do we mean by diminishing returns to scale. So the term diminishing returns to scale refers to the scale where the output increases in small proportion than the increase in all inputs. So if we assume that our inputs, and this is our outputs, and it was 10, 100, it is 15, and over here it is, let's say, only 103. That means that the proportionate change in input is more than proportionate change in output. Such type of your scales is your diminishing returns to scale, right? So let's take an example. If a firm increases input by 100%, but the output decreases by 100%, the firm is said to exhibit decreasing returns to scale. In case of the decreasing returns to scale, the firm faces diseconomies of scale. The firm's scale of production leads to the higher average cost per unit. So if you see over here in this diagram, if we were increasing our capital and labor from 22 to 24, our output is increasing from 200 to 300 only. That means the inputs were increased at 100%, but the outputs were increased at 50% only. So this is what it shows to be the decreasing returns to scale. Now let us just discuss few of the causes which are there for the decreasing returns to scale. The first one is the complexity of management. The increase in the scale of production on beyond a point may create the problem of proper management, which leads to the decreasing in managerial efficiencies. And this becomes one of the causes of your diminishing returns to scale. The another factor can be the entrepreneurs is a fixed factor. So entrepreneurship is considered to be one of the fixed and indivisible factor, because of which many a times the companies faces the decreasing returns to scale. The depleting natural resources becomes also one of the reasons of the diminishing returns to scale. Some activities in the limitation of natural resources are there which gives us the decreasing returns to scale. For example, if we doubles the fishing fleet, the number of fishes catch will not double because of the availability of the fishes may decrease when the fishing is carried out on an increasing scale. This is how we can see our increasing return, our constant return, and our diminishing returns to scale. The point A, this one represents your increasing return from A to B. This one is your increasing return. From B to C, you can see your constant return. The change is same, twice, double. Over here, you can see the diminishing return. because the output is not in the same proportion of input, right? So this is how we depict our diminishing, constant, and increasing returns to scale. Now, let's just discuss laws of returns or the law of variable proportion. So the law of variable proportion exists when we have one variable input and all the other inputs are fixed by the firm. If the number of inputs if a variable factor is increased, keeping the other factors constant, how output changes is the concern of the law. Suppose land, plant, equipment are fixed factor and the labor are the variable factor. When the number of laborers are increased, the number of outputs also increase. That proportion between your fixed variable and the output is known and understood in the law of variable proportion. According to the Professor Leftwich, the law of variable proportions states that if a variable quantities of one resources is applied to the fixed amount of the another input, the output per unit of variable input will increase by beyond some point the resulting increase will be less and less. With the total output reaching a maximum number, it's finally begin to decline. So let us just understand this entire law with the help of an illustration. And then you will be more clear with the entire law. So we have number of labor which are increasing like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. We have total production that is 8, 20, 36, 48, 55, 60, 60, and 56. Now we can easily calculate our average production and we know the formula to calculate the average production. That is total production divided by N. Therefore, 8 divided by 1, 8, 20 divided by 2, 10, 36 divided by 3, 12, 48 divided by 4, 12, 55 divided by 5, 11, 60 divided by 6, 10, 60 divided by 7, 8.6, and then 56 divided by 8 is your 7. Then we can easily calculate MP also, that is TPN minus TPN minus 1. So 8 minus 0, 8, 20 minus 8, 12, 36 minus 12 is your 16, 48 minus 36, 12, 55 minus 48, 7, 60 minus 55, 5, 60 minus 60 is 0 and 56 minus 60 is minus 4. So you can now easily categorize this MP in 3 stages. 1, when it increases, then it diminishes, then it becomes negative. So the table shows that the TP, NP, and MP increases at first, reach the maximum, and then start declining. The TP reaches its maximum at 7th unit of labor and are used and then it declines. The average product continues to rise till the 4th unit and the marginal product reaches its maximum at the 3rd labor. You can see over here also in your TP, it is increasing, it becomes constant and then it becomes decreasing. It increases, it becomes constant and it starts decreasing. MP also increases, becomes constant or decreases and then it becomes negative. It should be noted that the point of falling output is not the same for the total, average, and marginal. The three of the points were different. You see over here it is sixth, fifth, fourth. All are different. The marginal product starts declining first, the average product follows it, and then the total product falls at the last. This observation point of that the tendency to diminishing returns in ultimately found in the three productivity concept. The TP curve first rises with an increasing rate up to the point A, where its slopes is the highest. From point A onwards, the TP increases with a diminishing rate till it reaches its point C and then it starts falling. So you see over here in the diagram, this is increasing till point A with an increasing rate, then it increases with the diminishing rate, and then it starts falling. So we have three stages over here: increasing, diminishing, and then negative. Point A, where touches between the TP curve, is called the inflection point, up to which the total production increases at the increasing rate, and from where it starts increasing at the diminishing rate. The marginal product curve and the average project curve is rising with the TP. So this A point is the inflection point where there is a change in increase in TP. Before it was increasing with an increasing rate, now it is increasing with a diminishing rate. When the MP curve reaches the maximum point D, over here, MP is at its maximum, that point helps you out to determine your inflection point. The slope of the TP curve is at maximum at point A. You can see the maximum point of the AP curve is E. So the maximum point of AP is E. But for the TP, it's point C. The maximum point for the AP is curve E, where it coincides with the MP curve. So when the TP increases, or when the TP curve reaches its maximum point C, the MP becomes 0 at point F. So you see, it is at its maximum and MP is at its 0. When the TP starts declining, MP curve becomes negative. You see, when TP is falling, MP is becoming negative. So these are the three stages of variable law, where we have three stages, which is your increasing, diminishing, and then negative. And this is how we have differentiated our three stages: increasing returns, diminishing returns, and the negative returns. And this is only when we have at least one factor as our constant, right? Or our fixed. So let us just have a quick recap on all the points which we have studied today. So we have studied the both law of return to scale and law of returns, or the law of variable proportionate. So the law of returns are actually for the short period, whereas law of returns to scale is for the long run. Then we looked about the increasing return, then the causes of increasing, constant returns to scale, causes of constant returns to scale, diminishing returns, causes of diminishing returns to scale. This is how we have seen the increase in the output and your inputs. Then we have learned about the law of variable proportionates, where we have at least one fixed and another as variable. And then we learned about the three stages with the help of a schedule. We also plotted them on the graph, and this is how we learned about the stages in the graph. And we also looked on the point of inflection, which means that from this point onwards, the TP will increase with the diminishing rate. So now let us just have a quick recap of what we have studied in this video lecture with the help of the MCQs. So I have prepared 10 MCQ questions, and let's see how many of you get 10 on 10. So the first two questions are on your screen. Question number 3 and question number 4. Question number 5 and question number 6. Question number 7 and question number 8. Last two questions of this video lecture, that is your question number 9 and question number 10. So now let's just check the correct answers of all the 10 questions. So the correct for is option A. For question number 3, the correct option is option D. For question number 4, the correct answer is option B. For question number 5, the correct answer is option D. For question number 6, the correct option is option C. For question number 7, the correct option is option B. For question number 8, the correct option is option A. For question number 9, the correct option is option C. And for the question number 10, the correct option is again option B. I hope that you all have scored good score out of 10. And I do hope now you have able to understand the difference between the law of return to scales and law of variable proportion. With this, I would like to thank you all for watching this video lecture and have a happy learning.